Kitchen. Today we're going to be making meatballs in the Instant Pot. And this is my famous meatball recipe that I've adapted for the Instant Pot. I've adapted it for keto. So normally you use breadcrumbs in your meatball recipe, but I've used pork skins that I grind up as the breadcrumb mixture. So it has some Parmesan Reggiano cheese, spices. It's so delicious. And I'm going to show you a few different ways you can cook it. I'm going to show you one where you cook it exclusively in the Instant Pot, and another way, which is my favorite, where you bake the meatballs in the oven and then you finish them off in the Instant Pot. Let me show you what they look like. Come along with me and let's make keto meatballs in the Instant Pot together.
Let's take a look at the ingredients needed to make this recipe. I'm going to give you the ingredients for one batch of meatballs, but when you see me cooking, you're going to see me doubling it up because I decided to double my batch, and all I did was take the recipe and times everything by 2. We'll need 1 pound of ground beef, minimum ½ pound of ground pork, 1/3 to 1/2 cup ground pork skins or chicharones, 1 egg, 1/3 to 1/2 cup milk or heavy cream mixed with water, a ½ cup of Parmesan cheese grated, or I'm using Parmesan Reggiano, 1 to 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce, 1 teaspoon of your favorite seasoned salt, I'm using Tony's Creole seasoning, ½ a teaspoon of Italian seasoning, some cracked black pepper to taste, 1 to 2 tablespoons of fresh minced garlic or a teaspoon of garlic powder, whichever you have handy. 2 tablespoons of olive oil or avocado oil, 1 cup of beef broth or stock or water, 2 tablespoons of dried parsley or a 1/4 cup chopped fresh parsley, and about 3 cups of your favorite spaghetti sauce. I'm using Newman's Own, or you can make your own. And if you're following low carb or keto, just watch the carbs in your sauce. And if you're following keto or low carb, these healthy noodles are a great alternative to regular pasta. If you're not following a keto or low carb, go ahead and feel free to use regular pasta. So in order to make this keto friendly, I'm using fried pork rinds, and I'm going to grind it up into a fine powder using my blender. This is going to substitute for breadcrumbs. If you're not following a low carb, you can just substitute regular breadcrumbs, a 1-for-1 ratio. Once the chicharones are into a fine powder, pour them into the bowl and continuing grinding up the second half of the bag. I couldn't put the full bag in at once. My blender bowl wasn't large enough, so I did it into 2 portions. So continue grinding the rest of the pork rinds into a fine powder. If you want to bake your meatballs in the oven, go ahead and preheat your oven to 350. Let it warm up while you're moving on to the next steps. Whether you're going to cook your meatballs in the Instant Pot or the oven, you're going to make them exactly the same way. Put your 2 types of meat, your ground beef and your ground pork, into a mixing bowl. Again, remember, I'm doubling my recipe, so it's going to look like a lot, but I'm making half for the Instant Pot and half for the oven. Add in your minced garlic, your egg, add in your Parmesan cheese, ½ a cup, add in your 1 teaspoon of seasoned salt, add your 1/3 cup ground pork rinds, or if you're going to use regular breadcrumbs, substitute those. Put in your fresh cracked black pepper, and if you don't have cracked black pepper, just use regular pepper is fine. Add in your ½ a teaspoon of Italian seasoning. If you don't have Italian seasoning, you can use just oregano. And if you like Italian seasoning like I do, go ahead and put in a full teaspoon. Remember, I'm doubling my recipe, so I actually put in 2 teaspoons. Add in your 2 tablespoons of dried parsley or a 1/4 cup of fresh chopped parsley. Add in your 1 to 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce. Adding in my 1/3 cup of milk. This is going to help bind everything together. With clean hands or with disposable gloves like I'm using, mix all the ingredients together well to make your meatballs. As you can see, I'm using disposable gloves. They're slipping off my hand a little bit, but you're just going to mix the meatballs just until they're mixed thoroughly, but don't overmix them. You don't want to make your meatballs tough. The less you handle them, the better and more tender they will be after cooking. So just as once it's blended, we're going to get ready to start making the meatballs now. For the meatballs I'm going to cook in the oven, I take a cookie sheet and I'm going to line it with parchment paper. I love these Reynolds Wrap parchment papers that are already cut to size. I bought these on Amazon, and if I can find the link, I'll put it in the description below. To form the meatballs. I like my meatballs about the size of a golf ball, maybe slightly larger, and I'm using a small ice cream scoop to help me measure out about the same amount of meat for each meatball. Remember, don't over roll these meatballs. You don't want them to be tough when they cook. You want them just barely being held together. You don't want them pressed together too firmly. You want them pressed together just enough so they're not falling apart. So just continue this process with the remaining meatball mixture until you have rolled them all out to even-sized meatballs. Now that my oven is preheated, it's time to put in the meatballs that I'm choosing to bake in the oven. And you can see I have the racks with a little bit of space in between. I'm going to cook these in the oven for 25 minutes. To cook your meatballs in the Instant Pot, press your saute button to allow the Instant Pot to warm up. Once the Instant Pot warms up and the display changes to hot, you know you're ready to start browning your meatballs. So first you're going to add in some of your olive oil or avocado oil into your pan. I'm using about 2 tablespoons. Because you know your pan is hot, it's time to put in your meatballs to start browning. Keep in mind when you first put them down, they're going to start sticking, but you want to wait till they sear before you turn them over so they don't fall apart. You can see I'm first trying to use these rubber tongs, but the meat is sticking a little bit to the bottom of the Instant Pot, so I decided to take out a metal fork to help me flip over the meatballs to help keep them intact so they wouldn't fall apart. And you just scrape them under the bottom and it separates the meatball from the bottom of the Instant Pot. As you can see, I'm cooking my meatballs along the edge, and this has to do with the pot having a curved bottom and all the oil seems to go to the edge, so I don't usually use the cooking in the center part for delicate meats such as these meatballs. And just repeat this cooking process until all the meatballs have been browned nicely. Move them off to a paper towel on top of a plate to absorb any extra oil and continue on to the next batch. Now don't worry about the bits stuck to the bottom. That's going to add flavor to our sauce when we add our tomato sauce in later. Once all the meatballs have been browned, I'm removing them from the Instant Pot, and it's going to be time to deglaze the pan. You don't want these bits stuck to the bottom because when you cook the meatballs under pressure, you might get a burn error. So I'm going to put in about a half a cup. Actually, I'm going to put in the full cup of broth or water to deglaze my pan. Again, if you use broth over water, you're just going to have more flavor in your sauce. So I'm using a wooden spatula just to scrape the bottom. It won't damage my pot in any way, and it really helps give me some traction to scrape off the bits at the bottom. You can see I'm holding on to the edge of my Instant Pot pan, turning it around. It's not hot at the top edge of the pot at this time. So now that I've deglazed my pan and put it in my 1 cup of broth, I'm putting in my metal rack, and I'm just going to stack my meatballs on top of the rack to steam them in under pressure. Once all my meatballs are in the Instant Pot, it's time to put on the lid, lock it into place, and turn the valve to sealing, not venting. Because our Instant Pot was on saute function, we're going to hit cancel, hit pressure cook or manual, and we're going to cook it on high pressure for 5 minutes. So once the pressure builds, remember this is not the cook time, the pin will go up like that, Then we're going to look at the display, and it's still going to say on. And at this point, we're waiting just a few more minutes for it to be at the optimal pressure. It's going to build to the pressure that it needs to be, which in this case is high pressure. Once it builds that pressure, the 5-minute timer will come on, and that's when the full cook time will begin. And you'll see that right about now. When the 5-minute cooking time is done, your display will look like this. Then you know it's in natural pressure release, and we're going to let it sit under natural pressure release for 5 minutes. We then hit the cancel button to turn off the Instant Pot. The timer on my oven has rung, and now it's time to take out my meatballs from the oven. They've been cooking for 25 minutes. And you'll see that when I pull them out, you'll see lots of melting going on. That's part of the cheese and the fat from the pork and the beef coming out of the meatballs. I'm going to let them sit on the pan for about 5-10 minutes. Once they slightly cool, I'm going to move them to another clean dish. And look at how bubbly and delicious they look. And remember, you don't have to cook them in the oven. I'm showing you 2 different ways to cook them, in the Instant Pot and in the oven. Now after they've cooled and I've moved them to a clean dish, this is what they look like. Now we're going to do a quick release by moving the valve from sealing to venting to allow the rest of the pressure to come out of the Instant Pot. This will make it safe to open up the lid. And we're watching for the pin to drop. Once the pin drops, we know that the lid is now unlocked and we can safely open up the lid. And there's our steamed meatballs. Now we're going to remove the meatballs from the Instant Pot. I'm using my silicone gloves to remove the whole rack. Now to finalize the sauce, we're going to put on the saute function again. Pour in our 24-ounce jar of Newman's Own sauce, or your favorite spaghetti sauce. Now we're going to blend it well. I actually put a little water in the jar just to get the rest of the sauce out of the jar. Now I'm going to mix it well, and remember the drippings from the meatballs plus the beef broth are being added to the spaghetti sauce. And this is going to add a lot of richness to the flavor. So now we're going to cook and reduce down the sauce for about 10 minutes. Once your sauce has reduced down to the consistency and thickness that you like, go ahead and taste your sauce and adjust any spices as necessary. Now you have the option to throw your meatballs into the sauce. I like to serve the meatballs and pour the sauce over it. So I'm plating it with my healthy noodles and pouring over my rich, delicious, enriched spaghetti sauce that I made in the Instant Pot along with my steamed meatballs. And there you have it, mouth-watering meatballs and delicious spaghetti sauce made in the Instant Pot. If you enjoyed this recipe, please give my video a thumbs up and comment down below. If you would like to see more of my videos, please hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell to be informed when my next weekly video is available. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.